Hello everyone, welcome to No Life Digital. Just testing out the latest firmware 1.3 on the Canon R5. I have the 24-70 lens on here, RF lens. And it's in CLOG-3, 4K, the high quality 4K ALL-I. So I want to test out the 8K, the Cinema Raw Light 8K RAW option. I want to test out the IPB options in 8K and in 4K. I'm also going to be doing some overheating testing. I'm going to assume the lighter options, lighter codecs are going to help a little bit, but I'm not expecting massive changes here. I still would probably assume using a Ninja and getting the battery away from the system is going to give you the longest amount of recording time. But nonetheless, I'm very excited about all these new options that they added with this firmware. I didn't expect it to come. I thought they were just bullshitting. But you have the new lower bitrate IPB options, the Cinema Raw Light and 8K. You have the 1080p 120 frames per second, thankfully, and this CLOG-3. That is a great upgrade. You don't really see that type of upgrade on cameras. You know, we were expecting it, but it is nice to see nonetheless. So yeah, so this is the 4K, the best 4K quality, 4K HQ, ALL-I. This is the best quality you can get out of this camera in 4K. Let's turn it over to the IPB. All right, this is the 4K HQ UHD, but the IPB codec, not the ALL-I. Now, when I tested IPB versus ALL-I, I couldn't tell a difference with motion. I couldn't tell a difference at all. Very slight changes when there's like a lot of leaves around. I could tell a little bit of degradation, but for the most part, I mainly have been keeping the camera in IPB just to save on space because it saves so much space. So I'm very curious to see what this even lower version of IPB is going to do. Maybe I'll test it against regular IPB, I'm not exactly sure yet, but supposedly motion, right? Everyone talks about it. It's the motion that really, you can see the difference here. Again, it's just still in CLOG-3. But I would wager you can't tell the difference. I would wager you cannot tell the difference between this and the ALL-I version. If I switched back between the two, you probably wouldn't notice. Even with motion going on, you're just not really gonna notice, so. How does this look? I can't really tell on the screen, but I'm curious to know. So the bitrate on this, according to Cinema D, is around 85 megabits per second, and that is down from, let's see here, 30 frames a second, and that's down from 470 megabits per second, which is, and then 170 with IPB. So that's a tremendous difference in bitrate. I'm very curious to see how much of, I mean, there has to be some sort of quality degradation there. I'm very curious to see how much and if it's worth it to ever shoot in regular IPB, if it's worth it to even shoot in ALL-I, who knows. But this is a substantial difference here. And then if we're going to talk about 8K, we might as well switch over to that now. So this is the 8K CLOG-3 ALL-I. Let's get some motion here. I want to keep this short. This is 1300 megabits per second. There you go, there's your 8K. We're gonna switch this over to the IPB Light right now. And here is the 8K CLOG-3 IPB Light, which goes from 1300 down to 340 megabits per second. That's awesome. I mean, even the IPB, which is 680, is great, but getting it down to 340, let's get some motion. That's pretty cool. I'm curious to know, like, I just want to see the difference between the quality. Probably not going to know. I don't have an 8K monitor, so it's going to be downscaled to a 4K timeline. Not very scientific, I understand. I wish I had an 8K reference monitor to give you the exact, you know, pixel depth there, but I don't. So nonetheless, this is going to free up a lot of space if you want to shoot anything in 8K for those crops or for those like pans and swings and stuff like that. 8K is like super useful. 8K IPB, super duper useful. So don't just like write it off. Definitely think about 8K now with your footage because it does make a big difference. I do shoot a lot in 8K more recently after learning to work with it, you know. And now we're back in 4K HQ CLOG-3, 30 frames per second, IPB Light. Let's see how this footage turns out. If this looks good, it doesn't have to look perfect, right? If this just looks good, then I'm probably going to be using this codec more than anything else. Let's get a nice little portrait zoom in, huh? This 24-70 is nice, isn't it? Just looks excellent. You know, actually looking on the monitor, it does look a little softer. I don't know if that's just my eyes though. My eyes are pretty bad. I was playing around with the color spaces before, and I noticed that the CLOG-3 does have that extra bit of depth to the colors. Now, I'm not specifically talking about the highlights or the the shadows or anything like that. Just on the colors, when I went from a CLOG-3 LUT, Canon's LUT, to the regular CLOG LUT, and I switched between the two, there was a tonal shift, like a slight shift in the depth of the colors. I just saw a little bit more in the reds, a little bit more in the oranges. It just kind of brought out a little bit more life in those colors compared to the CLOG version, where it seemed like there was a touch of a yellow tint. I guess I can test that here. This is also daylight balanced, but here is the regular CLOG version. And then I'm just gonna swap this with the CLOG-3 right now. There we go, back to CLOG-3. I don't know if you can tell, but when I was doing it on my monitor, there was a tonal shift. It was a little bit more rich in the skin tones and the reds. And of course, you're gonna get that extra little bit of dynamic range out of it, which is great. I'm curious to know how much more dynamic range. I want to see someone who has those like professional things show us what the actual usable dynamic range is. With the CLOG-3, I'm sure we're going to see a Gerald Undone or someone do that, but I am pretty happy with everything that I've gotten from this camera. This camera, I'm going to let you guys know, this camera has been my main studio rig since I've gotten it, right? So that means it's shooting 4K HQ through the Atomos into my computer 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours, almost every single day. We'll say every other day for that amount of time. There's been multiple times I've just left it on. When I turned all the streams off, I just forgot to turn the camera off. Multiple times I've done this thinking like, oh my God, I probably fried my sensor. But it's still going strong. I haven't had many issues with it at all. It's been such a lovely camera. I see the new RC that's coming out. That's definitely piquing my interest as a mainly video person. But I don't think I'll get rid of this to get the RC. I might just get rid of all my other stuff to get the RC in addition to this. But we'll see, because that is something that I'm very interested in. So here we are. Here's my little video for you guys on the latest update on the Canon R5. If you have any questions or comments about this camera or about any of this footage or about anything that I've done in this video, leave them down below. I'm going to try my best to get back to everyone. If I need to, I'll do a follow-up video on the overheating stuff. I've been shooting this entire video. We're about over a half an hour, different sort of codecs and bit rates, quality settings, no overheating or anything like that going on. It's pretty solid there, but I'm gonna do some more stress testing on that so we get a more definitive answer. All right, cool. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and also subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And don't forget to head over to our website, nolife.digital, where you can subscribe to our podcast. We do this podcast every week on Sunday where we talk about tech, gaming, culture, cameras, stuff like that. So tune in. All right, thanks. Peace.